All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a really hard look at a hazard that's, well, literally all around us every single day. When we think of pollution, our minds instantly jump to thick, gray smog choking a city skyline, or maybe murky, contaminated water flowing into a river, right? We think of things we can see or taste or touch. But today, we're unmasking a completely invisible hazard. It's a physical disturbance that is actively accumulating in our bodies and our environments, yet it goes entirely unseen. We are, of course, talking about noise pollution.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. The invisible threat. 2. Tracing the noise sources. 3. Impacts on mind and body. 4. Wildlife under stress. 5. Governing the noise. And 6. Turning down the volume.
Section 1. The invisible threat, defining the hazard.
Now, I really want to emphasize the stakes right out of the gate here. Look at this brilliant analogy from our source material. Noise isn't just an everyday annoyance, and it's not just a temporary frustration. It is literally a slow poison. The damage it does isn't always immediate. It's cumulative. It just keeps seeping into our biological systems, drop by drop, sound wave by sound wave. So how do we actually define it? Scientifically? Well, actually, forget the deep science for a second. Noise is defined simply as unwanted sound, and what's super fascinating is just how subjective that can be. Think about it. The sweetest, most beautiful music in the world becomes a toxic noise if it disturbs someone who's just trying to get some sleep. On the flip side, the deafening strike of a jackhammer? Yeah, that's pretty much noise to everyone. It all comes down to the disturbance it creates.
Moving on to Section 2. Tracing the noise sources. Where does it come from? We can broadly split the culprits into two main camps here. On one side, you've got your industrial sources. Think of the heavy, mechanical strongholds of noise. Gigantic electrical equipment, big machines cutting, grinding, and packaging materials. Then on the other side, we have non-industrial sources. And these are the everyday culprits we all experience on our commutes, right? Loudspeakers blasting, the roar of cars and trains, airplanes overhead, and local construction work.
And as we can see, these broad categories really cover the whole shebang. From the rhythmic thud of a massive industrial press to the blare of street traffic, all of these sources are constantly generating physical disturbances that our ears and brains are just forced to process.
All right, Section 3, impacts on mind and body, the human toll.
The physiological effects are honestly absolutely staggering. This kind of pollution has health implications that are just as serious as breathing dirty air or drinking bad water. Exposure to noise actually changes your physiological state. It speeds up your pulse, messes with your respiratory rates. Millions of industrial workers are physically threatened right now with permanent or temporary hearing damage.
Medical evidence elevates noise way beyond just a pesky nuisance. Prolonged exposure can literally cause heart attacks, spike your blood pressure, and lead to total deafness. It takes a massive toll on the human machine.
But here's the thing. Even if your ears somehow manage to survive the onslaught, your mind might not. The constant invisible pressure severely disrupts our psychological well-being. It creates annoyance, physical tension in your muscles, nervous irritability, and insomnia. And get this, it's been reported that kids going to school in busy traffic-prone areas actually show measurably poorer performance. The constant irritation fundamentally alters concentration and can literally result in learning disabilities.
The ultimate danger of this hidden mental toll is that if it goes on for too long, it can cause a complete disturbance in an individual's entire personality makeup. It just slowly, quietly erodes our daily well-being.
Section 4. Effects on wildlife. Nature interrupted.
We can't forget about nature, because wildlife is being profoundly interrupted too. We're seeing declines in migratory birds that are just abandoning noisy habitats, and animals like deer and lions experiencing crazy stress from traffic noise near zoos. But some of the absolute worst disruption happens underwater. Human industrial activities, specifically those offshore seismic operations used in oil and gas, severely impact defenseless marine mammals. The noise is so disruptive to their feeding and calving areas that strict guidelines now recommend a 500-meter startup delay. If marine mammals are spotted within 500 meters of a proposed seismic array, operations have to be completely postponed until those animals have safely moved away.
Which brings us to Section 5. National and international standards, drawing the line.
Let's look at some data here. Under the Indian Ministry of Environment and Forests, strict thresholds have been established based on the zone. Notice the really logical step-down approach. Industrial areas cap out at 75 decibels during the day, dropping to 70 at night.
Residential areas are much lower, requiring a drop to a peaceful 45 decibels at night to prevent insomnia. But most crucially, notice the silent zone at the bottom. This is a specially identified area up to 100 meters around hospitals, educational institutes, and courts, capped strictly at 50 decibels during the day and 40 at night to protect the most vulnerable.
Now, let's check out the industrial exposure guidelines suggested by OSHA. What's really important to grasp here is this inverse relationship. Look at the table. An industrial worker is allowed to be exposed to 90 decibels for an 8-hour shift. But watch what happens as the noise gets just a tiny bit louder. The safe exposure time plummets. At 100 decibels, you only get 2 hours. By the time you hit 115 decibels, safe exposure drops to less than 15 minutes.
So how on earth do we actually enforce these numbers? Well, with tools like these. Accurate measurement is absolutely essential to establish that a noise problem even exists. These handheld sound level meters are basically the physical weapons that R&D teams use to build quieter appliances, maintenance crews use to find vibrating machinery, and governments use to measure violations and confirm this invisible problem.
Section 6. Methods for Noise Control. Engineering Solutions.
The engineering approach here follows a really brilliant logical hierarchy. Step 1 is always trying to control it right at the source. Stop the noise where it starts. That means switching machines off, adopting quieter manufacturing processes, or damping vibrations with the right materials. But let's be real, controlling the source is sometimes impossible or just too expensive. That leads us to step 2, control in the path. If we can't stop the noise from being created, we absolutely must block its invisible path to our ears. We do this by using acoustic barriers, complete enclosures for machinery, and heavy silencers on exhausts.
Finally, we got to talk about the last resort. What happens when source and path controls both fail? Well, the final line of defense is protecting the receiver. That's us. The International Labor Organization is crystal clear on this. No matter for how short a time, a worker should never enter an area of 115 decibels or more without proper ear protection. If there are single isolated bursts hitting 130 decibels, specialized personal protective equipment is completely mandatory. And at 140 decibels, no way. No worker should enter that area at all.
So, we've seen how unwanted sound acts as this slow poison, deteriorating our heart rates, our sleep, the learning ability of our kids, and the natural rhythms of wildlife. It's totally invisible, but the damage is remarkably tangible. Now that you can see this invisible threat, how will you identify the noise in your own environment? Leave us with your thoughts and ask yourself, what will you do to turn down the volume of your world?